Volume 3 is just as addicting as Volume 2. Hey! It's Romania Black, and yeah, I've got my cup of coffee tonight. I've got some stuff from the Feral fandom. I don't have a lot of comments, though, because where you all are at as I'm recording this, a lot of the stuff that the comments addressed, I'm like, oh, don't worry, y'all will get that in the weeks to come. So the only comment I have going into this is Anime Annie had pointed out. Remember back in the Dream Realm when Luo Binghe and Shen QingQiu kissed by accident? Remember that? Remember those fun times? Before all this madness that was last week? Yeah, so Anime Annie had a really good point talking about how the Dream Realm not only reveals to Shen QingQiu about the fact that Luo Binghe has been watching him very closely, enough to make a very accurate reference of him, but also it allows for the viewer and for Shen QingQiu to realize exactly how his laborious, persona that he's labored so hard to put out there has been perceived. And I thought that was really interesting because, Liu Qingge and Yu Qingyan, it's been forever since we've seen them in this story, they have a very distinct perception of Shen QingQiu. And a lot of that's based on how he's acted around them all this time. And so I think it would be kind of interesting in this story if, especially in this volume, because Shen QingQiu is kind of isolated away from them. Who knows what they're doing? They're probably gathering forces ready to go storm the castle and rescue him. And he's going to be like, hey, whoa, guys, we don't need to do that anymore. But I feel like while they're off doing that, this volume would be a good chance for Shen QingQiu to kind of reflect and say, hey, I've not been truthful this whole transmigrated experience. Now, obviously, he can't tell Luo Binghe, hey, I'm from another world, and I knew about you from a book I read, and then I was transmigrated into this character. He can't say all that. That sounds insane, and Luo Binghe would not understand. And in Luo Binghe's state, there's no way he could, comprehend that. So, in the meantime, since that's not an option, Luo Binghe could take this opportunity to kind of take this volume to open up to Luo Binghe and kind of be like, hey, I know this is how you perceive me, but that's not entirely true. Just how, you're not to be perceived in certain ways, I'm not either. And it could be a good opportunity for them to open up and talk to each other, or MXTX could just torture us. And if last week's any indication, she'll probably do the latter. Because we still have a volume to go, and she's not going to let us have nice things. I wondered about that today, because as we are on Scumville and Self-Saving System, we're just now touching into Volume 3. We're just putting the tip in, as it were. But I was wondering, because with, no spoilers, a large chunk of the end of Modao Zushi is extra stuff. It's lots of extras, lots of extra chapters, extra things. Modao Zushi has a lot of extra material on the back end of that set. Heaven Official's Blessing, not as much at all, but Modao Zushi very much does. So I'm curious to see what Scumville and like is Volume 4 just gonna be sex? Are we gonna wrap everything up in this volume and then Volume 4 is just gonna be nothing but sexy times? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that we will start to build towards the climax in this volume and then the beginning to first half of Volume 4, because it's a pretty chunky volume, which I like that. Heaven of Vigil's Blessing starts to peter out towards the end, not in quality, no, but in page length. And we talked about that in Heaven of Vigil's Blessing, that it was kind of like them maybe the publishers milking all they could out of the fandom by we'll squeeze an extra volume or two in. This one surprisingly seems like Volumes 3 and 4 are bigger than Volumes 1 and 2, which I'm excited about. That's how it should be, in my opinion. I don't know. As long as you have a cohesive story, you can split up in volumes however you want to. But if you're going to make your readers buy multiple volumes, it should grow rather than diminish, in my opinion. Obviously, economically, and capitalistically, that's not the way we go. But my prediction is that the first half of Volume 4 will be the climax and the resolution, and the other half will be extras. That's my prediction. I could be totally wrong. I'm ready to be wrong. I'm ready to be right. I'm ready to be wrong. I'm ready to be proven otherwise. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. I do want to give an update to the Feral fandom, because you know what? we haven't updated the feral fandom in a long time, at least not for volume 3 at all, have we? No. So this has been weeks ago on the Discord. By the time they see this, they're gonna be like, oh wow, we posted this a while ago. But remember those skin zoons? Remember Skinzoon? Remember that little weird cat, hairless cat creatures that some crazy fan artist made of Shen QingQiu? If you haven't, here's one where it's like, it's from Mulan. It's like, now all of China knows about this demented, disturbed creation that Gabadoodle shared in the Discord. It's the most frightful thing. It's not as frightful as the old Palace Master's death, but it's awfully close. But yeah, so that was the OG. And then someone in their infinite wisdom, as Shy Galadriel shared on the Discord, someone decided that they wanted to make an actual doll of Skinhe, of Luo Binghe, in like the Skizoon form, and they did it. And they sent it to someone. It's like, you want to kill it with fire, but then you think of all Luo Binghe's been through, and you're like, damn it, I can't do that to him. So you just tolerate it and like put it on a shelf somewhere and go, let's hope nobody sees this. I was talking about this in another channel on my Discord where people were sharing like not safe for work figurines. And I was like, as much as I'd love you all to send me one of those, I'd really prefer that you not, because the last thing I want to do, like I have family and friends come over and they see this space and they're like, oh, this is where you record at. And I'm like, yeah. And then the last thing I really want to see is have them see like this figure of this like male, like with his giant cucumber on display. And they're like, And I'm like, well, that was sent to me. And I don't think they believe me. So yeah, I don't know what I would do with that. I think I would be like, thank you, and then find something else to do. Speaking of the weird feral fandomness, someone had shared this comic, and at first, it was Luo Binghe, and he's like, he's all beat up and everything, and Shen QingQiu's inner monologue is like, the person who greatly damaged the protagonist's face, I'm gonna die. He's like, but despite that abuse, that damaged face, it proves he's still worthy of being called the protagonist. Now, I don't know at what point this is supposed to take place in. I'm assuming, I don't know what point this is supposed to take place in, honestly, if I'm being real. I think it's just a joke, but if it references something later on, who knows? But he's like, that firm and humble look, showing his noble and unyielding character, that straight and tall stature, that would rather break than bend. His protagonist halo really is too much. And then it's this damn horse body. I don't know who that is supposed to be beside him. It doesn't look like Gong Yi or Shang Qinghua. I don't know who that's supposed to be. Maybe it's Ming Fong. But maybe this was supposed to be at the very beginning of the novel. I don't know. But that stupid horse form, I'm like, what is wrong with this fandom? What is wrong? But I have my own experience to tell you all before we start this chapter set. My mother, she spends all summer gathering up cucumbers and zucchinis. She has her own little garden. She likes to garden tomatoes, zucchinis, and cucumbers. Cucumbers she makes cucumber bread out of, and she also like grills cucumber and like stir fry and stuff. It's great. She likes to pickle lots of things, so we have lots of cucumbers, and then she likes tomatoes. And so she had picked this whole bucket full of cucumbers and zucchinis, and she had it sitting down there at the doorway when you walk into their house. And I went over there, and she's like, oh, hey. She's like, I don't know what to do with this giant zucchini. Now, this is not a peerless cucumber, but I walked in, looked down, and saw this peerless zucchini staring me in the face. And I had to stare at that for a good solid couple of seconds. And my mom was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh, hold on, let me take a picture of this. And she's like, yeah, it's a big zucchini. Why? And I'm like, oh, you have no idea. I felt like Shen QingQiu, that I was like, oh, the heavenly pillar. So if Shen QingQiu is the peerless cucumber, then Luo Binghe has the heavenly pillar of zucchini. Shall we say? Maybe. Who knows? My mind, MXTX gutter mind, was activated and ready to go. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, we've talked for nearly 10 minutes. We're going to be looking at chapters 63 to 65 today. Pages 109 to 139 in the book. So a solid 30 pages. Think that that's a good, nice, round, even number here. Mm-hmm. Seems legit. But yeah, I'm super excited because when we last left off, well, I'm not excited for Shen QingQiu because none of this seems to be in his favor. When we last left off, Tianlang-Jun has somehow gotten his blood through this stupid eagle, bone eagle, gotten his blood inside of Shen QingQiu. Shen QingQiu now, his body has Luo Binghe, his dad, and his cousin's blood. He's got a family reunion of bodily fluids stuck inside his body, and let's hope it's only going to be blood for a while. But he's like, I don't want to be controlled by either of you. Luckily, Zhuzhi Lang is very whiny and just like, well, let's not hurt him. And Luo Binghe's panicked, and Tianlang-Jun's like, well, it just depends on what Shen QingQiu's gonna do. And I'm like, what does that mean? So I'm very nervous for Shen QingQiu because, as we talked last week, the work is never done for our peerless cucumber. And if Luo Binghe is gonna suffer mentally, Shen QingQiu is going to suffer physically, and suffer he has already. He needs a doctor. His arm and leg are like in shambles. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon unless Tianlang-Jun's blood can just heal him up jiffy quick. I don't know where this is going, but I'm a bit nervous. So we're not going to waste any more time though. It was a cliffhanger last week and I am ready to go. We are going to start Scum Villain's Self-Saving System, chapters 63 to 65. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 63. 3 sets of blood mites were tearing it up in Shen QingQiu's insides, enmeshed in open warfare. Of them, Luo Binghe's blood was concentrating on protecting Shen QingQiu's organs and meridians, while it held a firm advantage over Zhuzhi Lang's blood, but it has struggled to a stalemate with Tianlang-Jun's blood at the same time. Fighting on both fronts, 1-on-2, would inevitably leave him in a serious bind. Instead, the ones who could unleash themselves to the fullest extent were Tianlang-Jun's blood mites, because he had nothing to lose. Right, oh my gosh, yeah, like Tianlang-Jun doesn't care if he hurts Shen QingQiu in the long run. Like Zhuzhi Lang likes him, Luo Binghe likes him, Tianlang-Jun could care less. Also, a couple people were noting way back when we first introduced the blood mites, the idea that the blood mites are kind of like a parody, in a sense that MXTX is parodying the idea that in stallion novels they've been used in the past to like coerce people into doing things that they don't want to do, and it is non-consensual. And here MXTX is kind of parodying that. And at first I was kind of like, well, but even if it's a parody, it's still like Shen QingQiu didn't agree to that. It's kind of like, eh. But then they were like, well, Shen QingQiu knew about the blood mites. He knows about the trope. And I'm like, but still, when it happens to you, it's not comfortable. And I still stand by that. But MXTX has given herself kind of an out by saying like, well, if Luo Binghe's blood mites weren't in Shen QingQiu's body, then he couldn't protect Shen QingQiu from Zhuzhi Lang and Tianlang-Jun. And I'm like, you know what, MXTX, I ain't fighting you on this one. Fine. Be that way. You better think this through, Tianlang-Jun said to Luo Binghe. If we continue like this, who will be the first to falter? The worry and helplessness in Luo Binghe's eyes grew greater and greater. But in the end, he conceded only as so far as, will you stop first? Though an elder, Tianlang-Jun possessed absolutely no awareness of the concept of humoring his juniors, and instead he said, well, you first. Fine, Luo Binghe instantly replied. Tianlang-Jun's smile was unreadable. He truly is in love with Shen QingQiu. He turned to look at Zhuzhi Lang. What should I do? For some reason, when I look at them, I feel a bout of extreme displeasure. Zhuzhi Lang silently nodded. Shen QingQiu accepted his misfortune, but he didn't want to drag down others with him. All his life, the characters he hated most were those who got taken hostage. If someone wanted to kill him, wanted him to become some sort of weak character who held others back, well, they might as well as kill him. That's interesting that Shen QingQiu doesn't want to hold people back or to be a weak person. That's interesting. He managed to keep this from showing on his face as he said, this distinguished one can torment me however he wishes. As you said, after drinking it this many times, I ought to be used to it by now. But if you want Luo Binghe's body, don't even think about it. Luo Binghe, if you surrender to him, I'll crush my own skull. Shazoon! Luo Binghe yelled, furious and helpless. Shut your mouth. Shen QingQiu snapped back. Who said I wanted his body? Tianlang-Jun asked, mystified. Oh, Shen QingQiu was quite speechless. He is not as handsome as I am, Tianlang-Jun continued. Why would I want his body? Oh no! Oh no! Shen QingQiu had no words. Well, who said you were more handsome than him? Oh my God! Who gave you the license? Oh no! Shen QingQiu, now's not the time to be thinking about that. Great Master airplane shooting towards the sky personally confirmed that Luo Binghe is unparalleled through the ages, across 3 realms in the heavens and earth, envied by men and admired by women, beloved by the young and old alike. That he's this novel's #1 hotcake should shock all existence and make gods and ghosts alike sob over his beauty, okay? Shen QingQiu! You just... Oh my God. Oh. Shen QingQiu's face grew dark with consternation. Well, then what exactly do you want? My lord wants that sword, Zhuzhi Lang replied for him. That's right, Tianlang-Jun said. I'm going to give the human realm a present. But I can't do it without that sword. He wanted the protagonist's golden finger? Shen QingQiu's internal monologue was filled with a barrage of, "Ha ha! You wish! Who do you think you are? You won't even know how you died!" and the like. Only to see Luo Binghe raise his arm, and then Zhuzhi Lang raise his. In an instant, the exchange was complete. Swift and decisive without a moment of hesitation. Hand him over, said Luo Binghe. Zhuzhi Lang swiftly transformed into serpent form and snatched Shen QingQiu up in his mouth. Tianlang-Jun leapt astride and laughed out loud. Oh, you really believed me? Oh my God, no! This really was too shameless. Just like a grown adult making a pinky promise in order to con something out of a little kid's hands, then turning around and refusing to follow through. Shen QingQiu felt a sense of injustice on Luo Binghe's behalf for this bullying, and, even surrounded by Zhuzhi Lang's fangs, blurted out an accusation. Well, don't you know you're his elder? I only know that I am a demon, Tianlang-Jun said in a gentlemanly tone from his perch atop Zhuzhi Lang's head. Peak Lord Shen must have spent too long lingering among humans and forgotten that our race never cared for keeping our promises. Of course, most of the time, your kind only keeps up appearances as well. With those few last words, and smile faded from Tianlang-Jun's lips, Shen QingQiu's vision went dark, and something bright red and stinking hot enveloped him from all sides like a sack. Zhuzhi Lang had swallowed him. Oh my God! Well, okay, real quick, gutter mind MXTX moment. Zhuzhi Lang swallowing an entire peerless cucumber whole says some things about Zhuzhi Lang, but oh my God! What? I thought that they were going to try to I thought he was saying that he wanted Shen QingQiu's body, but he wanted the sword. But why are we keeping Shen QingQiu? Oh no. Oh, good. Chapter 17, Tianlang. When Shen QingQiu woke, the air was dry and his throat itched. He rolled into a sitting position. A young, dark-skinned demon girl was crouched next to him, and as soon as she saw him wake, she called outside in a thick accent, "He's up!" Tianlang-Jun lifted the curtain with one hand and poked his head in. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, Peak Lord Shen has certainly been asleep for a long time. Expression wooden, Shen QingQiu wiped his face and confirmed that no scent of an enormous slithering creature's gastric liquids lingered on his body. The gauze curtains billowed in a dry wind, and he took in the scenery outside. He lay atop a giant serpent with black scales. The serpent carried a splendid platform on its back as it steadily slithered along the ground. They were surrounded by a number of demons of all sizes in a whole or half beast form, gathered into an army that was miscellaneous in make yet grand in scale. Currently, they were on the march. What? Shen QingQiu determined that this was likely the southern border territories of the demon realm. The northern border was Mobeijun's territory, and it now belonged to Luo Binghe. Humanoid demons were in majority there, and they specialized in magic arts. Demons mixed or bestial forms were only common at the southern border, where they formed some sort of animal planet. Who could say where Tianlang-Jun was bringing all these demons or what he was planning to do? After Shen QingQiu finished taking stock of his surroundings, he suddenly noticed that the right side of his chest, as well as the entire arm, still stung and tingled, and it moreover felt a bit lethargic. He drew a deep breath, made all the adequate mental preparations, and looked down. It looked even worse than he expected. It was like a false limb of branches and leaves had been grafted onto him. A dense thicket of fleshy green sprouts and foliage covered his right arm, and they shivered with every move of his body, no matter how minute. His hand was numb, and he couldn't even curl his fingers. After this single glance, he couldn't bring himself to look anymore. Zhuya was right by him. He really fucking wanted to take it and slice his arm clean off. Then Zhuzhi Lang popped up, holding a little metal furnace that emitted a wisp of smoke. Shen QingQiu reacted to the sight of this fellow as if he would to the sight of a ghost. "Well, what are you doing?" he demanded, alarmed. Zhuzhi Lang froze on the spot. "Well, this one only wanted to help, immortal Master Shen." Shen QingQiu made a shushing gesture before his mouth. These were the words he feared most hearing from Zhuzhi Lang. By now he'd been enlightened to the nature of the snake's repayment. Zhuzhi Lang had repaid and repaid him until he'd swallowed Shen QingQiu into his belly. Zhuzhi Lang awkwardly lifted his sleeves as if he was going to cover his mouth, but then he lowered him back down. "Oh, immortal Master Shen, please trust me," he coaxed in an earnest tone. "If the ties that bind are not removed more than 7 times a day, the root fragments will lodge inside your flesh forever. I've only extracted them 3 times today, and this is a critical juncture. If they're not extracted, immortal Master Shen will be unable to keep this arm." Once he heard there was a risk of disability, Shen QingQiu lost all regard for his psychological needs and immediately offered his arm. Zhuzhi Lang retrieved a red-hot coal from the little metal furnace, and he held it in his bare hand and slapped it on Shen QingQiu's chest. Shen QingQiu had no words. He had just known he couldn't expect Zhuzhi Lang to help him in a normal matter. As soon as the coal touched the sprouts of ties that bind on his chest, I didn't realize they were on his chest too, they withered and curled under the heat, burning down to the roots. Shen QingQiu wanted to grimace at the pain, but because that would be too unsightly, he tensed his face and bore it. After Zhuzhi Lang had burned every patch of skin, budding, and green sprouts, Shen QingQiu's right arm was at least presentable, at least for the time being. Zhuzhi Lang put the coal away. "I will have to burn them 3 more times in the afternoon and evening." Shen QingQiu pulled the outer robe that had removed earlier back over his shoulders. Zhuzhi Lang accidentally glimpsed this and quickly lowered his head. Outside, Tianlang-Jun laughed. "Oh, silly child, what are you getting embarrassed for?" "Right," Shen QingQiu also wanted to ask, "what are you getting embarrassed for?" "What are you getting embarrassed for? What was there to be embarrassed about in a chest and arm that had just been riddled with fresh vegetation? What was there to be embarrassed about with regards to being you swallowed back up and spat back out?" "My lords, please don't make fun of this subordinate," Zhuzhi Lang said in all seriousness. "This subordinate absolutely does not have any improper intentions towards immortal Master Shen." He looked at Shen QingQiu and then emphasized, "Not the kind of improper intentions that Luo Binghe possesses." "What are you emphasizing that for?" Zhuzhi Lang scurried off the snake's back, carrying his little furnace, and returned to the ground to direct the troops. After being blown about by the wind for a while, Shen QingQiu began to look around, searching everywhere he could see Zhenmo. Where was Zhenmo? Oh, outside, next to where Tianlang-Jun was sitting. The sword had been tossed aside next to his feet. Shen QingQiu was going to split his sides laughing. That's proud, immortal Demon Wei's #1 mystic sword. The #1 solid golden finger in all of heaven and earth, and you just randomly chucked it somewhere? Is that really okay? Tianlang-Jun had been propping his cheek on his hand, staring off into the distance, but when he noticed Shen QingQiu's strange expression, he asked, "Well, what is Peak Lord Shen looking at?" He paused and followed his gaze down. "This sword of mine? That's Luo Binghe's sword," Shen QingQiu said flatly. Tianlang-Jun smiled carelessly. "Peak Lord Shen, there was something I've very much wanted to ask you." "Go ahead," he said. "Ask whatever. I'll answer whatever." "Have you and my son dual cultivated?" Shen QingQiu thought he heard wrong. "My apologies, what did you say?" Tianlang-Jun patiently repeated, "I asked Peak Lord Shen, have you and Luo Binghe—" Shen QingQiu's face twitched and he made a stop gesture. "Or does Peak Lord Shen not understand what I mean by dual cultivated?" "What I mean is—" "That's enough," Shen QingQiu said. "Have a sense of shame, okay?" He forced himself to assume an air of calm. Why would you think that I've dual cultivated with him? Well, to tell the truth, I've always admired human realm culture and customs, said Tianlang-Jun. So? What the hell did admiring human realm customs have to do with this question? Tianlang-Jun raised a finger and waved it, humming a sweet and amorous tone. Shen QingQiu had maintained a neutral expression on his face like a proper grown man, but as Tianlang-Jun continued humming, his aloof countenance grew shakier and shakier. Motherfucking regret of Chun-san! Well, how did it already spread to the demon realm? So Tianlang-Jun thinks him and his son have done the nasty thanks to that song. Tianlang-Jun hummed, and that's what he's humming, hummed 2 whole stanzas, pleased, and seemingly like he wished to continue. Well, only the human realm, with its outstanding people and remarkable train, could nurture such an unparalleled masterpiece. That daring of the plot and the splendor of the verse are truly worthy of such compliments, especially how every section ends with a hook that leaves one simply unable to stop, full of anticipation for the next installment. Wow! And apparently this thing is fucking serialized too! Wait a minute, said Shen QingQiu. This is the first time we've met in the Holy Mausoleum. You said it was an honor to meet me at last. So Tianlang-Jun hadn't just said that to be polite. He'd been looking forward to meeting Shen QingQiu ever since encountering that pornographic little ditty? That is exactly what I meant, Tianlang-Jun said with pleasure. Communicated with the boss about his interests and hobbies. Villain's character depth rating improved. Friendliness levels increased. B points plus 150. What the hell kind of interests and hobbies are those? The two of them stared at each other for a while until the dark-skinned demon girl who'd been taking care of Shen QingQiu before he woke up ran over, lively as a little gazelle. Shen QingQiu took a closer look and found that she really did have a pair of gazelle legs. The girl hopped up and down, looking up and yelling, "Oh my lord, is the new place we're going to really, really nice?" Tianlang-Jun waved at her with a smile. Of course, it's the best. Is there a lot of water? Is there a lot of water? Asked the girl, all innocence. Rivers and mountain streams flowing everywhere beneath the sky. The girl cried out in joy and hopped off into the distance. Shen QingQiu watched her retreating back, sensing something strange in this exchange. Where are you moving them? Peak Lord Shen has already come to a conclusion, Tianlang-Jun said leisurely. Why must he ask when he knows the answer? In terms of geological features, rivers and mountain streams were the opposite of common within the demon realm. This nice place was undoubtedly the human realm. Given your numbers, it looks like at least a fifth of the demons of the southern border have gathered in this army, said Shen QingQiu. Does your distinguished self think the cultivation world wouldn't notice you crossing the borderlands in such a grand procession? Who said I had to cross the borderlands? Tianlang-Jun asked. He stood and gave Shen QingQiu a disdainful smile. What do you think I wanted this sword for? You're going to use Jinmo to create a rift between the two realms? To be more precise, to merge the two realms. Tianlang-Jun corrected him. Merging the human and the demon realms! Oh, okay, all right. MXTX, have you read Berserk? Chapter 64! Oh my god. Ugh. Wasn't that the equivalent of crushing up two dimensions and mashing them together? Shen QingQiu didn't find this idea unbelievable. In fact, he found it the exact opposite. He was certain that as long as one had Jinmo in hand, achieving this ambition, which sounded like some absurd feat of the imagination, was absolutely possible because he had evidence from the original work. Merging the two realms was a lunatic move that Luo Binghe had pulled to fully unite the demon realm and the cultivation world when the original work neared its conclusion. Before, Shen QingQiu had always thought that the original work's Luo Binghe was the one he knew best. But thinking about it now, he realized that this character seemed very distant to him, almost like a stranger. That Luo Binghe cared not a single bit for the destruction and destructive consequences of such actions. His reason for doing it was that the separation of the realms had made them difficult to govern, and resources were unevenly distributed. All his demon wives and lackeys kept blathering on about this, which annoyed him, so he decided to simply up and integrate them to make everything easier to manage. This is the present you wanted to give? Shen QingQiu asked. Well, that's quite a lot of malicious intent. Tianlang-Jun stroked his chin. Well, I don't mean it as such, he said in a gentlemanly tone. I love the human realm very much, and enabling closer relations between the two races has always been my wish. Shen QingQiu raised an eyebrow. Has Tianlang-Jun really never thought about it, or does he just not care? Demons can adjust to the human realm, but how many humans outside of the cultivation world could grow accustomed to demons? Or, to put it another way, he placed emphasis on select words in the following question, even if you love humans, can you guarantee that all the demons will love them as well? The races have been separated since ancient times, and countless conflicts still arise between them. If you merge the realms without proper consideration, you shouldn't dream of having a single living day of peace. Peak, Lord Shen, is undeniably someone of the four major sects. You all sing that song, Tianlang-Jun said helplessly. This is a bit abrupt, but it wasn't my original intent either. Having experienced one loss, I can only forge ahead and merge the realms first and take care of the rest later. We'll take it slow. No matter how unaccustomed you may be to an unchangeable truth when first faced with it, you'll adjust in the end. All bosses are chunies. This really did seem to be a law of nature. But Tianlang-Jun's situation was rather special. Perhaps he had been an innocent and idealistic chunie before, who always thought that he could save the world and bring love and peace to the two races. But after being trapped under Bailu Mountain for so long, he'd become a bitter and resentful chunie. So a gargantuan consequence like this only be a little abrupt in his words. The last part even sounded like rape culture logic. Well, if you violate a person often enough, they'll cooperate eventually, so do it first and think about the rest later. Glad that this is brought up. Shen QingQiu couldn't resist asking, so you and Su Jian, was that merely to promote closer relations between races? When Tianlang-Jun suddenly heard his name, this name, that smile which had spread across his face like liquid ink, froze. He turned his head and Shen QingQiu could only hear him let out a quiet sigh. Xian, she was truly... Truly what? Shen QingQiu pondered the subtleties in Tianlang-Jun's tone. Agreeable and gentle? Kind and pure? My angel? Cold and heartless. Tianlang-Jun continued. I loved her for that. Shen QingQiu was going to split his sides laughing. Tianlang-Jun shrugged, but either way, she's already dead. So he didn't miss her at all? A demon's love would probably always be rather meager. Shen QingQiu was silent for a moment. What exactly do you think of Luo Binghe? Tianlang-Jun looked at him. I feel sorry for him. Shen QingQiu put on an unaffected smile, but had no way to respond. Though Luo Binghe had never said a word about it before, Shen QingQiu knew that he harbored some fantasies about his birth parents. He only knew that he had been born of a woman from a renowned sect and a noble of a heavenly demon blood, but he didn't know who exactly his parents were or their names. In fact, he'd always secretly fantasized about whether his parents might still be alive and how well they treated him, and how they never let him suffer the mildest slight. If Luo Binghe learned his birth father was this sort of person, with this kind of attitude, that this father might even look down on him because of his half-human parentage, those fantasies would truly become laughable. Once night fell, this grand procession with dust and sand billowing all around them came to a stop on a lush plain. There they made camp, though the only ones who actually needed to camp were the few humanoid demons. Their beastly kin could just sleep under the open skies, in dirt burrows, in the trees, in the grass, wherever they could find. Shen QingQiu's bed was inside a wide and comfortable white tent. Its exterior was simple, but the interior was fully stocked. Zhuzhi Lang personally made all the arrangements before bringing him inside. Once the demon girl who had accompanied him this whole time left, Shen QingQiu eagerly lay down on the bed, closed his eyes, and waited for dreams to descend upon him. Oh, are we getting to the demon realm? Please, please, please! Oh! An unknown amount of time later, he suddenly noticed the light shifting before his closed eyelids. Shen QingQiu opened his eyes to see Luo Binghe kneeling in front of his bed. He only got half a sentence out of his mouth. Luo Binghe, listen to me. There's something very important. Before Luo Binghe threw himself at him. He landed right on top of Shen QingQiu, shoving him back onto the bed while something soft covered his mouth so entirely. He couldn't make even a single muffled sound. He could only lie there and glare, his face turning red with rage. Luo Binghe had no restraint. He deepened the kiss further and further until he was gnawing at Shen QingQiu like a small biting animal. Shen QingQiu finally managed to catch his breath. Luo Binghe, kneel! Luo Binghe actually knelt with a swept of his hem. Do you know why I told you to kneel? Luo Binghe kept his back ramrod straight and said, well, as a disciple, I violated Shizun. Oh, who's talking about that? This master will settle that debt with you later. Tianlang-Jun told you to hand over Jinmo, and you really just handed it over? I don't remember teaching you to be such a pure and sweet little fool. I had no choice, Luo Binghe said. And it was nothing major. Why wouldn't I hand it over? What do you mean by nothing major? That's the golden finger no one else could have, even if they begged and cried. Reciting to himself that not even a mountain of gold can withstand a spendthrift. Shen QingQiu said, did you not consider why he wanted Jinmo? What threat the northern and southern borders, as well as Sangzhong Mountain and Huanhua Palace would suffer? Is Shizun angry that I gave Shinmo to him because he was afraid it would endanger all these places? Luo Binghe asked. Or only because it would endanger Sangzhong Mountain? What was he saying? This was just like those girls who continually pester them in by saying little things like, well, do you love me? Which do you love me more, me or your career? Shen QingQiu wanted to keep hashing out the considerations of relative value with Luo Binghe and get back to business, but the words caught in his throat. The light of the demonic foot soldiers' torches lit the fabric of the tent from outside, and he heard the cries of beasts and calls of purposefully lowered voices. No matter how he looked at it, this didn't seem like the world within a dream. So no matter how he looked at it, Luo Binghe was standing right there in his tent and not in the dream realm. He'd shown up in his real body. Oh my god! Oh no! He didn't have Jinmo to serve as an anywhere door, or a reference to a gadget in the popular children's anime Doraemon. The anywhere door opens a portal to wherever the user wishes. Okay, I've heard of Doraemon. Good to note. And reaching here from the northern border required traveling 1,000 kilometers at minimum. Shen QingQiu really wanted to slap Luo Binghe upside the head, but when he considered this long journey, he had to think before doing anything to him. Luo Binghe was creeping closer again like a snake slithering up to stick you, hit it with... Oh, it's like slithering up the stick you hit it with. One of his legs was already on the edge of the bed, which made Shen QingQiu nearly spit blood. But he had to assume Shizun's authority. Assume a Shizun's authority. Luo Binghe, aren't you too sure of yourself? Thinking you're so skilled and courageous that you deliver yourself up all alone. At least a fifth of the southern border demons have joined this army. Not to mention 2 seniors of your bloodline, who are the most difficult to handle. If you're discovered, it will only mean your death. So now he knows. Shizun, I can't steal you back outright. I'm afraid they'd activate the blood mites in your body. But you can't expect me to just sit and wait, Luo Binghe said. Don't scold me anymore, Shizun. I really couldn't resist. Shen QingQiu kept pushing Luo Binghe's head away, doing all he could to maintain a proper man. Did you alert anyone when you infiltrated the camp? Impossible, said Luo Binghe. If I wanted to be stealthy, not a soul will see me. There's only one thing I'd need to worry about. Before he could say exactly what that was, a light cough sounded from outside the tent, and they heard Zhuzhi Lang's voice. Oh, Immortal Master Shen, have you retired? As soon as Luo Binghe heard this voice, murderous intent flared in his eyes, and he shot an ice-cold glare in that direction. Shen QingQiu hurriedly shoved him down and gave him a severe look, ordering him not to do anything rash. For some reason, even though Luo Binghe had been glared at, a faint blush rose on his cheeks, and Shen QingQiu shuddered at the sight. He's like, now's not the time to be getting turned on by this, you masochist! Demonic troops were patrolling outside, and while inside there was nowhere to hide, so as a last resort, Shen QingQiu lifted the blankets on his bed, and Luo Binghe cheerfully slid beneath them! Outside, Zhuzhi Lang wondered to himself, is he asleep this early? Everything was silent outside for a while, and Shen QingQiu almost thought Zhuzhi Lang had left. He was about to let off a sigh of relief when Zhuzhi Lang continued, well, then This humble one will be disturbing your rest. Oh, so you're coming in whether I'm asleep or not? Then why the hell did you even ask? Luo Binghe poked his head out and asked suspiciously, what is this snake coming to do while Shizun's asleep? Well, just hide properly, you little rascal. Oh my god. Shen QingQiu shoved Luo Binghe's head back under the blanket and hopped up in bed. Well, don't come in! This is all insane! Zhuzhi Lang indeed didn't come in. Oh, so if you were tired, he asked, confused. Oh, Mortal Master Shen, why didn't you answer just now? I was tired. I didn't want to talk. Zhuzhi Lang, you can go. Zhuzhi Lang was perplexed. Well, didn't we agree on this earlier today? Oh, damn it, damn it, damn it. Indeed, he had earlier agreed to let Zhuzhi Lang come back in and burn off the rest of the ties that bind. Luo Binghe popped his head out again and quietly demanded, agreed on what? Shen QingQiu had just finished piling on a second set of blankets on top of Luo Binghe and lowering the bed curtains when Zhuzhi Lang stepped into the tent. He was holding that little metal furnace, gaze averted to the side. Oh, Mortal Master Shen, I beg your pardon for intruding so late, but further complications will arise if the ties that bind are not completely extracted. It would be too suspicious to drive him out after letting him in. Plus, Zhuzhi Lang was strangely hesitant to look at Shen QingQiu too much either way, so he would just have to be careful. Shen QingQiu stood in front of the bed, curtains, with a faint smile. I understand. Well, thank you for your trouble. I'm merely doing my duty, Zhuzhi Lang said politely. Immortal Master Shen, why don't you sit on the bed? He even took a step in that direction, but Shen QingQiu slid in front of him and grabbed his arm, turning him around in a half circle. Only when Zhuzhi Lang had his back towards the bed curtains did Shen QingQiu continue. Oh, not on the bed, right here. Dragged by the arm, Zhuzhi Lang made an inexplicably forced about face, but he was hesitant to ask why. He took it as a momentary whim and asked good-naturedly, while standing? While standing, Shen QingQiu said resolutely. Immortal Master Shen will be able to bear it? Behind him, Luo Binghe threw off the blankets, fury written across his face, and Shen QingQiu remained impassive. I've grown used to it. Zhuzhi Lang nodded and turned to set the furnace on the table. Shen QingQiu took this opportunity to send a palm strike at Luo Binghe across the space between them, knocking him back into the blankets and covering him back up at top speed. By the time Zhuzhi Lang turned around, both were in the proper places and nothing was amiss. Zhuzhi Lang retrieved a red-hot coal. Immortal Master Shen, please remove your outer robe. Shen QingQiu looked down and began to very slowly untie his sash. He didn't dare do it fast. If he really took it off, Luo Binghe would probably break both the bed and the person in the room. His hands creeped up with agonizing slowness, and after waiting forever, Zhuzhi Lang finally couldn't help himself from taking a peek. Oh, Mortal Master Shen, is it too difficult with your fingers' condition? Do you need this humble one's assistant? Seeing Zhuzhi Lang begin to look up, Shen QingQiu yanked at his lapels, and his outer robe slid right off his shoulders. Having yanked it off like that, his robe fell to his feet. Then he shoved his arm under Zhuzhi Lang's nose. The latter no longer had the attention to spare for anything else as he began examining it with care. After his tireless efforts to remove the ties that bind for a whole day, they finally showed signs of receding. The right half of Shen QingQiu's chest and his right arm were no longer as lushly foliated as they had been when he had first awoken, and only a few scattered little buds remained. Luo Binghe silently sent out a palm strike, and a wave of black chi rushed straight at Zhuzhi Lang's back. Shen QingQiu waved his arm and sent the coal in Zhuzhi Lang's hand flying out with a smack. The coal tumbled outside the tent, and having been slapped for no reason, Zhuzhi Lang was greatly perplexed. My hand slipped, Shen QingQiu said apologetically. Zhuzhi Lang accepted this explanation without jumping a single mental hurdle, and went outside to pick it up. He walked around for a time outside, confused. Well, where the hell did it roll off to? With a tap of his foot, Shen QingQiu leapt into the bed. Shizun, what sort of days have you lived while under their thumb? Luo Binghe whispered. What sort of days? Oh, idle ones. Spent lazing around doing nothing, pretty much. Don't mess around, Shen QingQiu whispered back. Then with a smooth motion, he shoved Luo Binghe back under the blankets. Luo Binghe was sullen and utterly unwilling to just let things go on like this. He didn't think he'd been absolutely defenseless against Tianlang-Jun, but as long as the blood mites in his Shizun's body were not removed, he had to restrain himself. With a crook of his finger, the outer robe on the floor flew into his hands, and he draped it over Shen QingQiu's shoulders. Put your clothes on. Outside, a minor demon passing by the tent greeted Zhuzhi Lang. Oh, General! Zhuzhi Lang acknowledged his greeting. Oh, you came just at the right time. Help me find something. His bearing and tone were entirely different from how he spoke to Tianlang-Jun. and Shen QingQiu, and it truly matched his status as a big shot general. Oh! Put what on? Shen QingQiu said. I was always going to take it off. Luo Binghe was enraged. Shizun, why do you insist on taking off your clothes for him to see? He shoved Luo Binghe down again and again, but still failed to make him behave, and Zhuzhi Lang suddenly returned while Shen QingQiu was still struggling. Not having the time to return to his original spot, Shen QingQiu whirled around and threw himself down, getting into a seated position in the center of the bed. Immortal Master Shen, didn't you just say you didn't want to do it on the bed? Zhuzhi Lang asked. Shen QingQiu laughed. Oh, really? Did I say that? In his haste to hide Luo Binghe, he accidentally sat on top of him, but that had worked out. Luo Binghe was finally docile and didn't move. Oh my God! Zhuzhi Lang walked up to the bed and seeing the mess of blankets, he casually remarked, "Isn't Master Shen warm?" Shen QingQiu wanted to get this over with as quickly as possible. He grabbed Zhuzhi Lang's arm and pressed the red-hot coal to his chest. Amidst the hissing sounds of burning, he said calmly, "It's not too warm." Then, Master Mortal Shen, doesn't it hurt? It doesn't hurt. Pleased, Zhuzhi Lang said, Immortal Master Shen was always so reluctant every time before, yet tonight he's finally taken the initiative for once. This is how it should have been. Shen QingQiu wasn't listening at all carefully to what he was saying, only thinking to finish this as fast as possible so he could shoo Zhuzhi Lang out as fast as possible. He asked, "Is that enough?" Zhuzhi Lang took the coal away. "It's enough." Shen QingQiu was overjoyed. Luo Binghe probably was at his limit too. He had never expected that Zhuzhi Lang would add, "Just now, my lord said that he wanted to visit you tonight." Before he could finish the first syllable of that last word, Luo Binghe at last couldn't take it anymore and exploded into action. Oh my God, no! We went through all that trouble! No! Oh, we still have one chapter left. Oh my God. Shen QingQiu hadn't even seen how Luo Binghe moved before Zhuzhi Lang was down on one knee, coughing a mouthful of blood. He looked up again. Another person was on the bed. Luo Binghe had one arm around Shen QingQiu, glaring at Zhuzhi Lang with fury in his eyes. After his initial shock, Zhuzhi Lang's expression quickly evolved into one of realization. You, Immortal Master Shen. You two! Shen QingQiu buried his forehead in his hands. He didn't want to say a word. Luo Binghe lifted his other hand and made a clenching motion. A black handprint appeared on Zhuzhi Lang's throat and his body jerked upward to float in midair. Don't kill him. There'll be consequences, Shen QingQiu cut in. And the situation isn't what you think it is. Luo Binghe's lips were taut and veins popped on the back of his hand as his fingers tightened. Zhuzhi Lang's face slowly turned green, but he showed not a single sign of pain. Right then, another voice spoke from outside the tent. Peak Lord Shen, may I come in? Well, why was it so lively tonight? Speak of the devil, Shen QingQiu's doorway was practically a marketplace. In a second, the faces of all three people inside the tent, the strangler, the strangled, and the witness went dark. In a chaotic flurry of motion, Shen QingQiu pointed at Zhuzhi Lang, dangling by the throat, and then pointed at Luo Binghe and made a motion to represent someone slitting someone's throat, followed by crossing his arms into an X. Who knew if Luo Binghe understood, since he just shook his head again and again? Under these circumstances, it was obvious that no one was going to answer the person outside. After a moment of silence, Tianlang-Jun said, well, I'm coming in. He was just like his nephew. Both of them only asked for a show before walking right in. So, when Tianlang-Jun walked in, he saw precisely this scene. Zhuzhi Lang and Shen QingQiu were pulling and tugging at each other as they tumbled upon the bed, a towering mass of blankets piled behind them. When Tianlang-Jun entered, both of them whipped their heads around, and in those 4 eyes on those 2 faces were identical expressions, a complexion splotched white and red. Shen QingQiu's robe still hung off of his elbows, halfway removed. Even with how much of a weirdo Tianlang-Jun was, his smiling expression still froze on his face at this scene. Only after a while did he say in a light voice, oh, how unexpected. Zhuzhi Lang blushed. My lord, the situation is a bit too complicated. Either way, it's not what you think. His body blocked the blanket covering Luo Binghe, and Shen QingQiu was half sprawled on top of him, hiding the hand Luo Binghe had clenched on the small of Zhuzhi Lang's back, a vital acupoint. With their sprawled positions combined with the fluttering curtains, it would definitely be difficult to discover if there was an extra person for some time yet. Tianlang-Jun nodded. He actually seemed a bit happy. He says, oh, there's no need to explain. I understand everything. Given his tastes and assumptions as a lover of the regret of Chenshan, if he said he understood, then there most definitely was a need to explain. Is there any reason for your distinguished self to visit at such late hours? Shen QingQiu said. If there is, please explain. If not, let's all rest. Thank you. I won't be seeing you out. Actually, it wasn't anything major, said Tianlang-Jun. There was just a minor abnormality. And I didn't know whether Zhuzhi Lang had run off to. I didn't know where he'd ran off to, so I checked here first, but it seems that it was not the time. No matter. Please continue. I don't mind. My lord, said Zhuzhi Lang. Whenever he spoke another word, Luo Binghe exerted more force. Whenever he shifted his legs slightly, Luo Binghe exerted more force. Whenever he tried to change positions, Luo Binghe exerted more force. He exerted more and more force, and a torrent of demonic chi poured in through the small of Zhuzhi Lang's back until a bitter taste rose in his mouth. Zhuzhi Lang didn't know what it meant to feel bummed out, but he was certainly experiencing what it was like to be bummed out right now. All right, said Shen QingQiu. Many thanks for your consideration. Then we'll continue. Just please see yourself out. But Tianlang-Jun did not seem about to leave. Instead, he found a stool and sat down. Well, why does Peak Lord Shen not exactly ask me what I mean by a minor abnormality? He asked leisurely. This is most unlike your previous curiosity and enthusiasm. It looked like this guy wasn't going to be off so easy to chase off. Realizing that he couldn't escape the problem, Shen QingQiu instead calmed down and smiled. If Tianlang-Jun really likes to watch it, it's no matter if he wishes to converse and liven things up, but please go ahead. And so Tianlang-Jun began to liven things up. Not long ago, the Jinmo sword I kept by my side suddenly began to levitate and hum persistently. Clearly, no one was summoning it, yet this phenomenon occurred. It truly demands one pay a bit of attention. Shen QingQiu immediately understood that the one thing Luo Binghe needed to worry about, which he hadn't had a chance to explain yet, was, in short, Jinmo. After all, a sword that had followed Luo Binghe for so many years would inevitably have some sort of reaction when its master appeared nearby. Verily, that is a curious event, Shen QingQiu said. But I'm afraid that there isn't much meaning in Tianlang-Jun discussing it with me. Tianlang-Jun slowly stood. It is most definitely meaningless to discuss it with Peak Lord Shen. But if a certain naughty child comes looking for him, then that would make it very meaningful. Though it was only a few short words, with every couple he spoke, he would pause, taking a step closer to the bed each time. Shen QingQiu was visibly holding on to Zhuzhi Lang with both arms, and Luo Binghe was secretly pinching Zhuzhi Lang's acupoint as Tianlang-Jun took step after step, getting closer and closer. The force behind this master-disciples pair's actions grew and grew. Zhuzhi Lang truly was very much without fault and very much unfortunate. Just as Tianlang-Jun made to lift the bed curtains, the shrill and sonorous cry of a wild beast sounded from outside the tent, and he whipped around to look. Outside the white tent, firelight surged into the skies, while soaring black shadows were cast from all directions. The roars of beasts mixed with hysterical screams. Invaders! Surround him! All of you surround him! Don't let him escape! He's gotten out! Blade met blade, while swords and arrows tore through the air, uniting a raucous chorus with the sound of fangs and claws tearing into flesh. Tianlang-Jun didn't have time to say a single word and darted out of the tent. Shen QingQiu's heart dropped back down from where it had been suspended. The invader's timing was just perfect. Luo Binghe flipped off the bed and helped Shen QingQiu down. Zhuzhi Lang had been tossed to the floor and was unable to move for the time being. Shen QingQiu looked down and said, "Many thanks for just now." With Zhuzhi Lang's degree of loyalty, not disregarding his personal safety, to yell, "My lord, it's them! It was those two!" counted as an intentional help. Upon hearing this, Zhuzhi Lang sighed. This humble one understands. Understands what? Shen QingQiu asked. Luo Binghe was impatient. Well, why waste time talking to him? Zhuzhi Lang looked up and said in full sincerity, "To alleviate the pain of longing, Immortal Master Shen had a clandestine encounter in the depths of night. Though this would inevitably be a blight upon his honor, the circumstances are understandable." Shen QingQiu had no words. This child had probably spent so long by Tianlang-Jun's side that he'd assimilated the latter's thought patterns. Indeed, Shen QingQiu really shouldn't have wasted his time talking to him. The master-disciple pair slunk out of the tent, only to see that not too far away on the overgrown plains, the dark masses of the southern border demon army had surrounded someone or something. Two dazzling, pure white silhouettes in the center were especially eye-catching. One was a sword swooping with unstoppable momentum, while the other was a person who left not a blade of grass or shard of armor in his wake. Is it Liu Qingge? The circle surrounding him was broken again, and new demons filled the gaps one after the other. Tianlang-Jun's honest words of admiration drifted over the night wind. Excellent blade work! Excellent spiritual power! The newcomer stood atop the head of a giant armor-wearing wolf that he had slain with his bare hands. His white clothes were spotless, and he was marred only by a small splatter of blood across his cheek. This fighting style that went for max fanfare, that was simple and brutal, and where the attacker seemed to loathe to leave a single member of the enemy camp unaware of his grand arrival, certainly didn't let down Bison Peak's reputation for arrogance and love of battle. It was Liu Qingge! Yeah! Oh my god! But just when Luo Binghe and Shen QingQiu are starting to go somewhere, two pure white wargs leapt through the crowd of beasts to prostrate themselves at Tianlang-Jun's feet. One raised its head. A human voice came from its mouth. "My lord, it's Sangjiang Mountains by Zon Peak Lord Liu Qingge." Tianlang-Jun nodded. So that's how it is. No wonder his blade work and spiritual power are so superb. But why would the Bison Peak Lord suddenly grace the southern border with his presence? Liu Qingge leaned on the side slightly, and Qiang Luan flew back into his hand. He flicked away the beads of blood gathered upon the blade tip and said coldly, "Is Shen QingQiu here?" Shen QingQiu was overwhelmed by this show of favor. What, was Great Master Liu here to rescue him? Luo Binghe took a glance at the expression on his face and pursed his lips. Tianlang-Jun finally understood. "So you're here to look for Peak Lord Shen. Well, he is indeed here with me." "Bring him out," said Liu Qingge. "It may be a bad time for him to see you," Tianlang-Jun said suggestively, "and even if he did, he likely wouldn't want to return to Sangjiang Mountain with you." Shen QingQiu didn't even know what complaints to sputter at this. Liu Qingge squinted. One of his wargs at Tianlang-Jun's feet said, "100 battles Bison Peak, they say. In my opinion, they truly don't deserve the name. I heard that when this Liu Qingge fought that Luo Binghe kid, he lost horribly countless times. He hasn't lived up to the Peak name for a long while. It should be called 99 Battles Peak by now." "No, he should be called the 98 Battles Peak Lord," the other continued. "If he fought our lord, he'd lose without a doubt." These two beasts were so mouthy. Sycophantic and mouthy! With this agreeable remark, the brawl broke out anew. Liu Qingge tapped his foot and flew forward like an arc of white lightning. Tianlang-Jun was in no hurry to enter the fray. With a casual flick of his arm, blood flew from his fingertips. When the droplets hit the ground, they didn't soak into the dirt, but rather solidified, quickly forming into 6 blood wolves with crimson fur. They surrounded Liu Qingge, biting and tearing at him as they circled him like wheels of wind and fire. With incredible ease, Liu Qingge unleashed Qiang Luan, and the heads of all 6 beasts separated from their bodies, melting them back into liquid form. But the sword flew back to him. The blood wolves rapidly coalesced again and continued their dance of bared fangs and waving claws. Though Liu Qingge's attack was powerful and precise, without a flaw to be named, neither did it have an actual effect. Nor did Tianlang-Jun lower his bleeding hand. He kept it lazily extended, and as the blood dripped down, new beasts sprang up one after another. "He's bleeding that much and his face is even pale for a second. Is he a mobile blood bank?" Liu Qingge was here to save him. Shen QingQiu couldn't just remain an onlooker, watching from this fire as the opposite shore, remaining aloof to the conflict. He was about to move when Luo Binghe stole ahead of him and dashed outside. Tianlang-Jun looked intently at Luo Binghe. "So you came after all." "Shizun is here. How could I not come?" Luo Binghe said coldly. "Zhuzhi Lang, look at this face of his," Tianlang-Jun said with a smile. "The sight of this look of cold fury does truly make me happy." Zhuzhi Lang? Only now did he realize that Zhuzhi Lang hadn't arrived, and no one was there to chime in. A disappointed expression crossed Tianlang-Jun's face. Off to the side, Liu Qingge was about to speak when he suddenly saw Shen QingQiu and forgot the insults he was about to spit. He froze for a second and shouted, "Hey!" Shen QingQiu waved back in greeting. The shock on Tianlang-Jun's face grew rather waned. grew rather than waned. He turned towards Luo Binghe. So just now, in there, all three of you? He took 3 pauses for the entire sentence, but Shen QingQiu still understood what he meant to express. He couldn't say whether Luo Binghe understood, but the latter leapt into battle with a dark look on his face. I am as speechless as Shen QingQiu. I had to go heat up my coffee. Oh my God. We were just starting to make progress in more ways than one. And then Liu Qingge shows up, which, I mean, on the one hand, glad to see him again. On the other hand, we were taking 3 steps forward. Are we about to take 2 steps back with Luo Binghe? Or can Liu Qingge and Luo Binghe, can Luo Binghe control himself and not come to the wrong conclusion about Liu Qingge? And we'll talk about him at the end of this chapter set, but oh my God, this chapter set was so good. This is my jam. Like, at this point, I was like, yes, all of the things. Check off all the boxes at MXTX. Give me everything that I want. Like, I couldn't stop reading. I couldn't pause to talk to you all about what was going on because I was like, I need to know what happens next. And that's when you get on a roll with MXTX, and then you figure out that you've only got 3 chapters for this week, and you're like, no, but I want to keep reading. So that's where I'm at. So, I'm going to get on Discord real quick and go over the chapter titles before we start. So, chapter 63, Reiki has these spoiler tags. Chapter 63 is a trip to the south. We're going to the south to merge the realms. I was like, oh man. All right. Chapter 64, rendezvous in enemy camp. Well, yes, that is a very apt title. And then chapter 65 was, this friend circle is really a mess. Friend circle. AKA Shen QingQiu's harem. Oh my God, this family, this Luo Binghe, your family is nuts. So, we're going to add some B points up here in a hot second. Don't worry. But I've reworded one of our goals that we have for Scum Villain Self-Saving System because it kind of came to me last week where we have the situation of, this used to say Shen QingQiu needs to realize he has to save Luo Binghe. But here's the thing about Scum Villain, and what I love most about it. You cannot predict where it's going or what it's going to do. You just have to just buckle in and stay along for the ride and go, all right, MXTX, I'm going to go wherever you're leading me, because I did not think these chapters were remotely going in this direction at all. I thought we were going to stay in the cave. I thought it was going to be a battle. I thought there was going to be negotiations. I thought that, I guess what I thought was that Luo Binghe was going to go along with them, and they were just going to use Shen QingQiu as the hostage to let Luo Binghe go with them, and that they were going to use Luo Binghe's body as a vessel for Tianlang-Jun. Nope, that's not it. So I'm like, well, wait a minute. His body's falling apart, and he's using Jin Mo, but he doesn't care about Jin Mo, and Shen QingQiu's like, but we're going to talk about this. But every preconceived notion of what Shen QingQiu thinks a character would do in the story is not how things are going down. And Shen QingQiu is kind of having, what I love about this chapter set is that Shen QingQiu has to think on his feet. And for the first time in this whole story, 3 volumes in, Shen QingQiu has to drop the pretense of being Shen QingQiu. Shen Yan has to drop the pretense of being Shen QingQiu and go, what would I do for real in this situation? And not what would Shen QingQiu do. And that is such a huge thing for me. And it's the one thing that finally allows him dropping the pretense of being Shen QingQiu and just being Shen Yan, being himself in this chapter set, allowed for him and Luo Binghe to get closer and to make some headway and to finally, like, interact with one another in a way that didn't feel uncomfortable, that didn't feel forced, that didn't feel aggressive. It was like so organic, and I loved it. But now that Liu Qingge is back, I'm like, is Shen QingQiu going to put up the wall, or is he going to be like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be myself? Because that's what I've got to do in this situation. Because at this point, who cares? The real Shen QingQiu is Shen QingQiu. Shen Yan's like, I'm him. I can't help it. We are what we are. Let's just go with it. And so, but what I've changed this to is that Shen QingQiu no longer needs to save Luo Binghe. That's off the table. Now, what it is Shen QingQiu and Luo Binghe, they have to come to terms with one another. They have to say, okay, bygones are bygones. The past was the past. Now we need to work together, because nothing good is going to come from us putting on these fronts and avoiding each other and being weird around each other. We just have to accept that we're okay. We have a mutual interest in each other. Obviously, Luo Binghe loves Shen QingQiu, and he wants to protect him no matter what. Shen QingQiu doesn't want to abandon Luo Binghe, and he needs to get to know him. And he wants to get to know him. He liked his character back in the original novel. He just was terrified. Now that he's in Shen QingQiu's body, he's like, all these bad things are going to happen to me. Well, now we know that's not going to happen. So the story can change. So what do you do with that now? And that's what his character is trying to figure out. So obviously, Shen QingQiu has not realized that he loves Luo Binghe yet. Has not realized that. And I feel like that's going to be like a volume 4 or end of this volume thing situation before we get to that. And then this whole mutually liking each other, that's going to be the last thing. That's going to be volume 4, right? But oh my God. So yeah, no. What I like about this is, and I talked about this at the very beginning of the chapter reaction, is MXTX does find a way to justify all the things that she does. So even though I had an issue with the blood and how it ended up in Shen QingQiu's body, and that was way back in the past, 2 lives ago, it does serve a purpose. And I like the fact that it creates this stalemate where Luo Binghe and Tianlang-Jun, they kind of cancel each other out, but just barely. And then Zhuzhi Lang. I'm sorry. Also, every time I say Zhuzhi Lang, I've been watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and I've been rewatching season 6. And there's a character named Laganja Estranja, and in season 6, she starts out, she's getting like really she's vibing with another drag queen called Gia Gunn. They're like, sushi roll, and Bianca or Bindala Crim's like, barf. But the whole sushi roll, for me, whenever I say Zhuzhi Lang, I want to say it in the tune of sushi roll. So it's been plaguing me all chapter read, and I keep trying not to say Zhuzhi Lang, but I want to say it so bad. Anyway, I do like that Zhuzhi Lang is, when he's not talking to Shen QingQiu or Tianlang-Jun, he can be a general and be himself, but he instantly like cowers into this little like snake crawling back to Shen QingQiu. But Immortal Master Shen, I'm like, oh my God, all 3 of these men, the entire demon bloodline, have it out for Shen QingQiu. And Shen QingQiu's like, I didn't ask for this. Shen QingQiu, in this chapter set, he definitely was like, I have to roll with this. I don't like this, but you know what? Damn it, I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I really don't want these ties that bind to sprout all over my skin and bind themselves to my flesh. So you know what? I'm just going to go with it. And compared to Tianlang-Jun and Zhuzhi Lang, Luo Binghe's not that big of a deal anymore. And Shen QingQiu, I think, Shen QingQiu, from having interacted with Zhuzhi Lang and Tianlang-Jun now, he has a new appreciation for Luo Binghe and realizes just kind of how sad it is to be Luo Binghe when your own family doesn't even acknowledge you or care about you. And Shen QingQiu's like, that kind of sucks. And that's kind of awful. And I kind of feel for you. So, maybe you do deserve some pity. Maybe you deserve some like kindness and consideration. It's like, keep going and more. And so here we are. But also Tianlang-Jun has a voyeuristic tendency, because he's like sitting there whenever the one picture we get, and I'm going to be bouncing all over the place in this chapter discussion, so you're all going to have to deal with me because it's just crazy. But the only picture we get for this chapter set is one of my favorites, I think, in the whole novel so far. And it is, I love it because I was trying to visualize what was happening. There is Zhuzhi Lang laying down. Luo Binghe has his hand in Zhuzhi Lang's back, like what they were talking with the acupoint. Shen QingQiu is like above him, being like, he's trying to make the blankets big enough where you can't see Luo Binghe. And then Tianlang-Jun, who looks very young and very handsome in this moment, is just like, oh, are you having it out with my cousin, with my nephew, and my son too? Oh, you're awfully kinky, Shen QingQiu. And Shen QingQiu's like, I'm not doing anything. But the best part is that, like, look, Tianlang-Jun's like, oh, carry on. I don't mind me. And I'm like, no! I was like, no! It just went, it felt like a Benny Hill sketch. I felt like, I felt like there was like Benny Hill music should have been playing, or just, it was like a SNL skit. It was just all this like comedy upon comedy upon comedy of them trying not to reveal Luo Binghe being here. I was living. I loved it. This chapter set was everything. I was just like, ah! And it was finally this organic moment where Shen QingQiu dropped his guard. He's been having this wall put up the entire series where he's been like, I don't like Luo Binghe. Luo Binghe looking at me all funny and blushing, and sexual things. No. And Shen QingQiu's been batting them away like they're flies. But this is the one moment where there's so much tension and so much, like, there's no time to put up a wall. And so Shen QingQiu puts the wall down, and in that moment is himself as Shen Yan, and just like he's like, well, shut up and let's get to make this work. And it is so organic and it feels so right. It just feels so right. And it establishes the dynamics with his and Luo Binghe's relationship. It establishes kind of maybe their kinkery. It establishes so much of what could be with their relationship. And Shen Yan doesn't even realize it. And it's like, it's like, damn it. Anyway, so what I love about this is that in the moment where Shen QingQiu's like, what do we do? And Luo Binghe is like, well, Shizune, he's like, shut your mouth. And he's like, we need to figure this out. So Tianlang-Jun reveals that he does not want Luo Binghe as a vessel. That's not on the table anymore. So what Tianlang-Jun actually wants is to merge the human and the demon realm, using Zhenmo. Okay. And which is so funny because in Berserk, that's a plot line. It's, pretty, you'll find out soon enough if you watch that series. So I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of like Berserk. You want to merge the realms together. Fine. And that's kind of like different world building on MXTX's part, because in MXTX's other stories, I mean, without spoiling anything, Moda Azushi doesn't really necessarily deal much with demon versus human realms, so that's not even an issue. And then in Heaven Official's Blessing, they're all kind of like there, and they're very fluid. So there's not really any distinction like there is in this series. So the idea of merging it, and basically the whole point of merging it is that essentially, basically the demons will be fine. The demons will adjust just fine. They're like, oh, we've lived in the slums. This is going to be a penthouse. We are perfectly okay with this. Whereas the humans are likely going to suffer, if not get wiped out instantly from such a merger. What's interesting is that I feel like Tianlang-Jun is smarter in ways than he looks, because Shen QingQiu, of course, gets upset because he's like, what? Well, Zhenmo, you just tossed Zhenmo to the side. Why aren't you using this epic sword? It's like the best sword in the whole book. And the point is that maybe Tianlang-Jun knows that Zhenmo is dangerous and that Zhenmo tries to kill all of its users. So he's like, I'm just using this sword to merge the dimensions. I really don't care about anything else. We're going to keep it off to the side so that, it doesn't kill me too. And I'm like, that's pretty smart. But Shen QingQiu's like, this is a legendary sword. Like, you can't just leave it lying around. And I'm like, yeah. Because Tianlang-Jun is not a character from this story that's interacted with all these other elements. He doesn't give a shit about them. And so Shen QingQiu is kind of having to put all of his prejudiced thoughts out to the side. which is a thing, and it's kind of crazy. But also, like I said, we've been bouncing around a lot in this discussion. Whenever, Tianlang-Jun says, well, he's not as handsome as I am, so why would I want his body? And Shen QingQiu's like, well, who said you were more handsome than him? I'm like, Shen QingQiu! When he's like, well, who gave you the license? Like Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky. It establishes that Luo Binghe is the most handsome of handsome. And I'm like, Shen QingQiu, can you hear yourself? Can you hear yourself? I swear, if Luo Binghe knew the inner thoughts of Shen QingQiu's minds, he would be insufferable. So maybe it's a good thing that doesn't happen. But I was just like, Shen QingQiu, are you kidding? And he's like, he just wants the sword. And the thing about it is that Luo Binghe loves Shen QingQiu so much. And we know now that Zhuzhi Lang is not a hostage. He's going to kill himself if given the opportunity. That Luo Binghe is like, fine. If you'll do what I say, here's the sword. And Shen QingQiu's like, no, why'd you just do that? And of course, Tianlang-Jun's like, joke's on you. Fingers crossed. Pinky promise doesn't count. And then he just leaves with Shen QingQiu. And I was like, now, the whole thing about Zhuzhi Lang swallowing him, Zhuzhi Lang says later on that he wants nothing to do with Shen QingQiu. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Fine. Maybe Zhuzhi Lang and Tianlang-Jun will be in like some incestuous relationship. Everything else has happened in this novel. I won't be surprised. So, but he wants nothing to do with Shen QingQiu, which is kind of cute. I like Zhuzhi Lang a lot. He's very innocent and very cute. And he's just doing what he says. He's just a yes man, and it's fun. But we go to part 17, which is called Tianlang, which is about the dad. Even though the dad's not really a center point in all this, it should be worth noting that Luo Binghe knows that they're related now. He knows as much. That's been established. But I did not anticipate us jumping to this. Did not anticipate this at all. So I was like, okay, sure. So he's gathered this southern army of these demons that are more bestial than others. I think that's worthy to note that the Southern Army is more bestial. The more humanoid ones are in the north, like with Mobei-jun, and they're with Luo Binghe, which makes sense because Luo Binghe is half human. Makes sense. I definitely think it's worth noting that Mobei-jun has kind of disappeared from the story at this point. I feel like MXTX is waiting to have Mobei-jun come back like at a crucial junction. So like maybe in the next chapter set, if Liu Qingge is fighting, then Mobei-jun will show up and get Luo Binghe out of there, or something will happen. I feel like MXTX is really good with introducing elements, then making you forget about them, and then reintroducing them when you least expect it. So could still happen, right? But I do like the idea of I love the imagery that MXTX creates in this scene of them all on this army. There's this big black snake that has like a little mobile tent and everything on its back, like balancing, and it's like got a tent and everything. It looks very let me find that image there. It looks very nicely decorated inside said tent. Looks very posh. But yeah, so basically to spare no expense, because Shen QingQiu is the protagonist now, whether he likes it or not, and has the harem. But yeah, I like the idea that Shen QingQiu, I'm very glad that he lets Zhuzhi Lang help him get the ties that bind off, because that's been my one worry going into this chapter set. Also, he describes the southern border as Animal Planet, which is hilarious to me. But the way that MXTX writes the moment where he looks down and it's worse than he expected, and it's like, that was my one fear going into this chapter set, was the ties that bind. How bad is it? The good news is that it seems like maybe after this chapter set, the ties that bind won't be an issue anymore because Zhuzhi Lang has burnt them all off. That's the positive of this chapter set, is hopefully that problem is gone now. We can take that off the table. Not an issue. It does not change the fact, though, as we put up here, that for Shen QingQiu, what are our problems that we still have? Well, there are 3 demons' blood in him. That is still a problem. And here's the thing, until something happens to Zhuzhi Lang or something happens to Tianlang-Jun, it's still going to be in him. So to me, that would mean that both of those characters have to die in order for that blood to not be effective anymore. I don't want Zhuzhi Lang to die, but that seems like it would have to be the case. Because I don't know how else you get their blood from Shen QingQiu unless he just has a whole blood transfusion. But then I don't know how that works. So, I don't know. I don't know how that works. But there's that. We don't know about the Without a Cure. Without a Cure has not acted up yet. So, we can assume that maybe it's fine. Is it even a thing anymore? We don't know. And then there was also the Sower. The Sower's curse. But that Sower is dead. So I'm assuming that since the Sower has died, maybe the curse is gone. It's not been brought up yet either. But Without a Cure is still being mentioned. We don't know about it. So that's kind of where we're at. Also, he has 2 items on them. He has the Binding Rope, which I feel like MXTX is purposefully not mentioning these items because we could use them later on, and the Jade Pendant. So those things are still up in the air, could be used. We don't know yet. The Binding Rope, I swear to you, if she doesn't have him use that until him and Luo Binghe have some kinkery, then I'll laugh really hard at that. But I think the Jade Pendant's going to have to come in at some point and be used, because why else would we keep it all this time? So yeah. So Zhuzhi Lang comes in. I like that he carries this little furnace with a coal in it. It's so freaking cute. I want like a Zhuzhi Lang action figure that turns into a snake and has a little furnace toy that you bring with you. Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Company, you have all of these wonderful marketing ideas you can do. You keep giving us more Modao Zushi and Heaven Visual Blessing things, and that's fine, but give the eldest sibling some love. You've got lots of potential here that you could be doing. I could see people getting a Zhuzhi Lang plush. Why not? So, I'm just saying. So, at this point, Zhuzhi Lang's like, if I don't help you to get the fragments from the roots off of your skin, you won't be able to keep your arm. And Shen QingQiu's like, I need my arms. Let's do this. Fine. And again, the idea that he just suffers through the pain, he just puts on a straight face, acts like it doesn't bother him, and just suffers through it, I think speaks a lot for Shen QingQiu. I feel like maybe if Luo Binghe questions him about that later on, to be like, well, doesn't it hurt, all this? And he's like, well, I have a certain reputation to maintain. I can't, let it show. Then I think that could be telling to Luo Binghe to be like, oh, this is kind of how his personality's been, and would give him more context. But I don't know if Luo Binghe is going to figure that out. I don't know. So anyway, Tianlang-Jun, he shows up, and Shen QingQiu's like, why am I embarrassed? What are we doing? And so, of course, Zhuzhi Lang has to bring up the idea that Luo Binghe has all of these improper intentions, and Shen QingQiu's like, why are you bringing that up? Why are we talking about this? And that's when he notices that Jin Mo is just tossed to the side. And as soon as Tianlang-Jun says, this sword of mine, and Shen QingQiu says, well, that's Luo Binghe's sword, I'm like, can you hear yourself, sir? And he's like, well, is there something you want to ask? And, or at least Shen QingQiu says, whatever you want to ask me. And he says, have you and my son dual cultivated? And the thing about it is that at this point, Shen QingQiu knows that the majority of the population in this world believe that him and Luo Binghe have had sex and are having sex and are maybe doing it right at this moment. And he's like, oh my God. But the thing about it is that he's mad because this rumor has been spread that's unsubstantiated, but he's not mad because it's not true that he likes Luo Binghe. He's not mad because someone's spreading a rumor about him having sex with a man. He's mad because whatever they're spreading a rumor about hasn't happened. And he's like, well, it's not happened. So why are you saying things that aren't in reality yet? And I'm like, he at no point says, oh, that's gross or disgusting. Me do it with a man? He doesn't say that at all, this chapter set, which is very telling, because it's kind of like Shen QingQiu and that wall with Shen Yan coming down, and him being like, well, it's already spread to the demon realm. Everybody's singing songs about our pornographic ditties that haven't happened yet. And it's like, yet. So I feel like this was a huge step in this chapter set with Luo Binghe and Shen QingQiu, especially with Shen QingQiu, to be like, oh, wow, I love the way that MXTX writes, wow, apparently this thing is fucking serialized too. Like, you know, Shen QingQiu is all about getting things right. And he's been all about that since volume 1 with, here's how the book portrays it, then this is how it has to go down. Which is why he was so baffled by Tianlang-Jun not being what he expected. He was so baffled by Luo Binghe not being what he expected and not judging things right. So now he's like, well, everybody's singing these little pornographic songs about us, but that's not how it's gone down. So be accurate. And so, you know, it's just Shen QingQiu just wants things to be told correctly, even though he's an unreliable narrator. And it's just humorous. Because it's like, okay, well, Shen QingQiu, maybe you should start having sex with Luo Binghe so the songs will be accurate. You know, maybe you should remedy that. Maybe you should get on that. And maybe that's what will end up happening by the end of the story, right? So I love that the system just doesn't even announce itself anymore. It just shows up. It's just like communicated with the boss about his interests and hobbies. So the boss! Yeah, I love that it's referred to, Tianlang-Jun is referred to as the boss. So, which is the final villain, the boss. The villain of the series is Tianlang-Jun. Villain's character depth rating improved. Friendliness levels increased. Well, you might as well make the bad guy in the story your friend. What could it hurt? So this says B points, 150 added. So basically now it's 1580 to our knowledge. Still don't understand what we're going to do about these heartbreak points and these anger points. I feel like the heartbreak points, this jade pendant's going to cure all that whenever we get to it, right? I feel like once he gives him the jade. My thing is, I don't know what the context will be for Shen QingQiu giving him the jade pendant, because it almost feels like they're past all that. Maybe not. It felt like in this chapter set, we made a big stride to getting past that. But then again, I don't know. Because here's the thing. With Liu Qingge showing back up, they obviously are going to try to rescue Shen QingQiu. Liu Qingge is not going to be happy about Luo Binghe. He is not going to be happy about it at all. He's probably not going to want Luo Binghe to be around Shen QingQiu. And so then Shen QingQiu is going to be like, well, but him and me, what do we do? And he's going to have to find a way to explain this to Liu Qingge. So I wouldn't be surprised if Liu Qingge manages to get Shen QingQiu away. And then when Luo Binghe chases after them, I wouldn't be surprised if everybody ganged up against Luo Binghe to be like, well, your dad's come in and now there's all these demons and all this, and you took Shen QingQiu away and it's caused all this problem, and they like gang up on Luo Binghe. I won't be surprised if that happens. And I don't know what would happen then. Like, would they imprison him like in their own version of the water prison? But then if that happens, like Luo Binghe's kind of OP. So what would happen then? So there's things that I'm like, I don't know next chapter set what's going to happen. I feel like I could see Luo Binghe either running away with Shen QingQiu and Liu Qingge being like, what the heck? Or Liu Qingge chasing after them and him and Luo Binghe getting into it and Shen QingQiu having to be like, hey, wait, we're all pretty. Let's stop. Or Liu Qingge snatches Shen QingQiu back again, and then Luo Binghe chases after them, is caught, and it's all a thing. The big question, there's a couple things that are big questions in all this. One is, you know that Shen QingQiu is going to be asking Shang Qinghua, aka Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky, what do we do about this? Because, you know, Shang Qinghua, aka Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky, they're the ones that wrote the character of Tianlang-Jun. So Shen QingQiu is going to be like, he's the final boss. What do we do to beat him? And I won't be surprised if Shang Qinghua's like, I don't know. And Shen QingQiu's like, ah! Like, I won't be surprised if that's the case. If he's like, I don't know how to beat him. I didn't write him that well. And Shen QingQiu's going to rip his hair out. But I feel like that's going to have to get addressed. And if Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky doesn't know how to beat him, then Shen QingQiu's just going to have to figure it out. And that kind of won't surprise me, because that would be a nice twist from Shen QingQiu going from starting the series back in volume 1 with all of these expectations being like, well, if I just do this, this, and this, I can avoid my fate and save the day and be okay. And now by this point in the story, there is no OG versus new. It's pretty much all Shen QingQiu's got to figure it out on his own. He can't rely upon Airplane's writing anymore to figure out how this is all going to end. Or at least that's how it seems to me. Could be surprised later on, but I don't know. Anyway, so I like that Shen QingQiu questions Tianlang-Jun's hobbies, being like, what kind of hobbies are singing pornographic songs? And I'm like, well, you were reading a stallion novel in your own spare time, Shen QingQiu, so pot calling the kettle black, you know. But I like this little demon girl. I wonder if she's related to Six Balls. I thought that the entire time. This little dark-skinned demon girl, I just picture she has like bluish black skin and like big red eyes, and I just feel like she's related to Six Balls. I feel like that's the case. Probably not canon. You all can give me more information in the comments, unless she's going to be a major player in all this. I just thought she was a really cute addition. But yeah, that's when they figure out that Tianlang-Jun is going to merge the human and demon realms. And Shen QingQiu, the thing about it is, that is one thing, is that in the OG, that is what Luo Binghe did. He merged the realms as well. Although, his reasoning was a little bit different than Tianlang-Jun's. Tianlang-Jun's is very stereotypical bad guy, like, I'm gonna merge the realms to destroy the humans and let the demons take over. Kind of like Scar letting the hyenas go in the Pride Lands in The Lion King. That's pretty much it. Whereas, Luo Binghe, at the very end, in the original work, this all happened towards the conclusion, which leads me to believe that this is going to mirror it a little bit, and that the climax is going to be like merging the human and demon realms and what ends up happening. So Luo Binghe in that version didn't care about the destructive consequences. His reasons were because it was easier to govern. We'll talk about that in just a second. And the resources were easier to manage. Right? We also establish throughout here that all his demon wives and lackeys kept blathering on about things that annoyed him, so he simply decided to just integrate things to make it easier to manage. And so he's like, yeah, and I would like, we'll talk about his, you know, Tianlang-Jun's reasons a little bit more here in just a second. I wanted to point out with this, though, for Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky, something that just hit me as I'm writing this down is that Shen QingQiu, who is Airplane's, you know, reincarnated, transmigrated form, he's had to do all of this, like, paperwork and work and managerial content up throughout this novel, and seems to be both familiar and loathing of it. I'm like, I wonder if as an author, this whole idea of merging the worlds together was kind of Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky's way of just saying, like, screw it, I'm going to make it easy and not have to deal with all of this, like, keeping track of which world is what and whatnot. I feel like it was all an author's way to kind of be more concise and cohesively, like, narrow and shrink everything down, which just seems like a narrator choice, and that's why Shen QingQiu is kind of like, well, that was a stupid thing to do. Now, Tianlang-Jun's whole thing is he's like, you know, I love the human realm very much, and I want to enable closer relations between the two races. And that kind of ties to Luo Binghe being half demon and half human and hating his demon blood and wanting to be accepted by the humans. That kind of relates to that. And so he's like, oh, Peak Lord Shen, you know, you're from the four major sects, so you all sing the same song. But he's like, I can only forge ahead and merge the realms first and take care of the rest later, and we'll take it slow. So you all will get accustomed in the end, and you'll adjust. And I was really surprised that MXTX just came out and said that that logic was like rape culture logic. And I was like, oh, I was like, she just came out and said it. Like, she was just like, that's exactly what that sounds, is that you violate someone so many times that eventually they cooperate. So you do it first and think about the rest later. And the idea is that at one point, maybe Tianlang-Jun had decent intentions, but being trapped in the mountain had made him bitter and resentful and had warped those into something, you know, a bit more grotesque. So I thought that was really interesting because here's the thing. Tianlang-Jun, you know, the mountain prison had warped his perceptions. Then you have Luo Binghe, who, being in the abyss, did the exact same thing. It also warped his perception. So, because yeah, sometimes some of that attitude that Luo Binghe had back in Volume 1, where he was like, and I know, people have commented being like, Luo Binghe was trying just to be nice, trying to get back with Shen QingQiu, but Shen QingQiu was thinking at the time that Luo Binghe was acting with this rape culture logic, that he was trying to like stalk his Shizun and force him to submit. And that's the mindset that Shen QingQiu had throughout Volume 1 after the abyss and after all that. He's like, oh, I've pushed him to this point where he's like his dad and he's going to come back and try to make me do all these things. He's like, that's how he is. He knows now that that's not the case. And there's more behind it than that. But it's interesting how these two parallel each other just a little bit, right? They parallel each other, except for Tianlang-Jun, he didn't have a Shizun like Luo Binghe has, right? Because then, you know, Shen QingQiu had in his mind how, I feel like to me, Shen QingQiu was trying to compare himself to Zhuzhi Lang, because Shen QingQiu was like, oh, well, I'm the Shizun to Luo Binghe. I'm this kind, considerate, you know, friendly person that Luo Binghe attaches himself to, and you know, we have this little sincere bond and everything. So for you, Tianlang-Jun, that must be what Zhuzhi Lang was to you. And so Shen QingQiu probably thought that he could be compared to her, but no, that is not how it is. Instead, Tianlang-Jun describes her as cold and heartless. And that's what he liked about her. And I was like, oh, so we get the idea that Xian was cold and heartless, not agreeable and gentle, not kind and pure, not his angel, which is all things that Luo Binghe believes about Shen QingQiu. No, she was cold and heartless. But she's dead now, so it doesn't matter. And the fact that he doesn't miss her, Shen QingQiu's like, but this is not what I was expecting. And it's not. And that whole cold and heartless thing, I feel like Luo Binghe gets that from her because, you know, Tianlang-Jun, he's kind of a romantic, like a voyeuristic romantic guy. And Luo Binghe is kind of romantic too, but Luo Binghe has this cold and merciless side to him that apparently is from his mom. And it's like, shit. But yeah, so Shen QingQiu is realizing that all these assumptions he had and how he thought that Tianlang-Jun and Zhuzhi Lang would maybe parallel him and Luo Binghe are not true at all. And Shen QingQiu is not like her, and the relationship that Tianlang-Jun had with his wife is not like Shen QingQiu's relationship with Luo Binghe. For the better, but still. So then he asks what he thinks of Luo Binghe, and he says, well, I feel sorry for him. And Shen QingQiu is just like, Shen QingQiu is like that Muppet that's just like, what do we do? Because he feels really bad for Luo Binghe in this moment. Because all throughout his time working with Luo Binghe as a kid, Luo Binghe, I keep forgetting that Zhuzhi Lang is not the woman that died without eating the congri that Luo Binghe made for her. No, that was the foster mom. Zhuzhi Lang sent him away floating in the little raft being like, get out of here, kid. Like, she just let him go. So Luo Binghe has always wanted to meet his biological parents and had this ideal fantasy of them that is not true at all. Like, it turns out his parents were actually cold-hearted demons, and Luo Binghe ended up which makes sense because Luo Binghe is, you know, part demon. His mom wasn't a demon, but she was a cold-hearted, merciless woman from a sect. And Luo Binghe, you know, it makes sense now why he was the way he was in the original novel, because of his parents, their upbringing, and then he didn't have anybody to love him to show him that there was another way than being just like them. But in this version, he had the influence of Shen QingQiu or Shen Yan, and that did make an impression on him, and it did change him. So that's all very interesting, right? But I love it. I love how MXTX like weaves this into this chapter set. It's great. So I was really hoping that we would go into a dream sequence. I was hoping as soon as he was like talking about closing his eyes, I'm like, oh, let's get a dream. Let's get a dream. I want Luo Binghe to show up because I need them to talk more. I need them to talk things out, especially now that Shen QingQiu has like more of an understanding of Luo Binghe's situation and has more empathy for him. And then when Luo Binghe shows up, I was like, oh, and then when they started kissing, I was like, oh, cool, this is a dream. And Shen QingQiu gives into it. Like, he starts kissing him back because he's like, oh, it's just a dream. If we just make out in the dream, it's fine. I'm like, Shen QingQiu. But then, of course, Luo Binghe is like a damn little biting Pomeranian. He's like, nah, nah, nah. And Shen QingQiu's like, okay, hold on. I'm going to teach you the art of making out because you're biting me and it's weird. But he doesn't even get that far because he realizes that this is not a dream, that Luo Binghe is actually there. And the thing that gets me is that Shen QingQiu scolds him. He's like, why did you hand that sword over? I don't remember teaching you to be. And that's when he realizes he's like a pure and sweet little fool. He's like, oh shit, you are acting like I want you to act. I want you to be the little white lotus again. You were acting like that in that moment. That's what I wanted. Shit. And about that time, Luo Binghe's like, well, I had no choice. I had to hand it over. It's no big deal. And Shen QingQiu's like, no big deal. That sword is like, it's the gold finger. It's the sword that will control the entire story, and you just gave it away. And Luo Binghe's like, well, are you angry because I gave Zhenmo to him because you're afraid it would endanger everyone? Or just Sangzhong Mountain? And Shen QingQiu's like, oh my god, stop. He's like, can we just put this to rest? Shen QingQiu's like, I don't like Liu Qingge that way. Although Liu Qingge, I believe, likes Shen QingQiu that way. And he's like, it's not just that. He's like, I just think that this is a bad idea for the story and all the people in it. So quit being a diva. Basically. And that's when he realizes that he was really there. And so Luo Binghe just booked it. He booked it to get there. He used that protagonist power and booked it. And that's when he's like, I can't steal you back outright. They'll activate your blood mites. He's like, but I can't just sit there and wait. And he's like, please don't scold me anymore. I couldn't resist. And Shen QingQiu's just like pushing his head away as he's trying to like make out with him more. And he's like, well, did anybody like, catch you? Like, I like that Shen QingQiu just gave up on scolding him. He's like, fine, whatever. You came to rescue me. Are we good? And that's when Zhuzhi Lang shows up. And we start this whole business of trying to hide Luo Binghe. And what I love about this is that Luo Binghe keeps poking his head out. He's like, why is the snake here? What is he doing? And Shen QingQiu's like, get down, you fool. Just the physical comedy of this whole chapter set. The physical comedy, the fact that Luo Binghe is like, he's like, no. He's like, Shen QingQiu, don't let him see you improperly. Like, I'm the only one who gets to see you naked. And Shen QingQiu's like, we don't have time to deal with this right now. Like, I love it. I loved every bit of this chapter. At chapter 64, 65, loved it. Every bit of it. And then, of course, Shen QingQiu's like, I need the ties that bind to be gone. And so I like that Shen QingQiu tries to get the explanation out in the open, and Zhuzhi Lang does admit why he's there. And so Luo Binghe is like, okay, it's for the benefit of my Shizun. It's keeping him safe, so I'll let this go down. And I'm like, oh, thank God. And he's like, I'm just doing my duty. And I like that at first Shen QingQiu's like, let's leave the bed, leave the blankets so you don't see Luo Binghe. And then, you know, he takes the robe off, and Luo Binghe can't stand it, right? And so he throws the coal outside so that he can have time to talk with Luo Binghe. And then Luo Binghe is like, well, what sort of days have you lived while under their thumb? And Shen QingQiu's like, they've not done anything. He's like, get back down there. And then, of course, I love that Luo Binghe, like, whips his hand and the robe flies back onto Shen QingQiu. And he's like, son of a bitch. He's like, put some clothes on. And so then he's like, I had to take it off anyway to get the ties that bind off. So all this business goes down, and that's when Tianlang-Jun comes into the tent. And oh my God, just, I love that Shen QingQiu is like, we're just gonna have to roll with this. We're just gonna have to roll with this. We're just gonna have to go with it. And he comes in, and sure enough, there's Shen QingQiu with Zhuzhi Lang trying to hide Luo Binghe. And I feel like by this point, Tianlang-Jun realized Luo Binghe was there. He knew. He was just trying to, or he suspected he was close. Maybe, maybe not. The last line we talked about the threesome maybe indicates that he didn't realize he was there, or maybe he was just pointing it out just to torture Shen QingQiu some more. Who knows? But just the humor, the way that Shen QingQiu describes in his monologues, it's so good. But he comes in, and of course Zhuzhi Lang is trying to be like, you know, this is complicated, but it's not what you think. And Tianlang-Jun's like, no need to understand. I understand everything. And Shen QingQiu's like, no, you don't. So that's when he's like, you know, why, you know, Jinmo's acting up. I can't imagine why that was. It seems like it needs a bit of attention. And the way, I didn't realize this until MXTX writes it later. It says with every step, with every couple words he spoke, he would take a pause and move closer to the bed, being like, it most definitely is meaningless to discuss it with the Peak Lord, but if a certain naughty child came looking for him, that would make it very meaningful. So I was like, oh my God, like just, I need to see this animated. I need to see all of this because it would be so hilarious. I don't know how the Chinese censors would even do this. I don't even know how. There's so many sexual innuendos and so many compromising positions. I don't know if the Chinese government would think that they're just friends. Especially with all the implications. I don't know if it's even possible, but which makes it so sad because I'm like, no, it's so outright sexual. There's no innuendo. There's no metaphor. It's like, nope, this is what you think it is, even though it's not really. And that's when we have Liu Qingge showing up. So, the crazy thing is that Zhuzhi Lang, what does he say there? He's like, oh, well, you know, Immortal Master Shen, to alleviate your pain of longing, you know, it only makes sense that you were with Luo Binghe, so I get it. And Shen QingQiu's like, oh my God. He's like, you're just like your uncle. He's like, you just assume from those songs that I'm with Luo Binghe. But yeah, Liu Qingge shows up with, I don't know how Liu Qingge shows up. It seems like he's by himself. I don't know if there's another army waiting in the wings or if Liu Qingge is just at the forefront of it. But one thing I did notice is that the idea of him showing up, you know, with the white clothes that are spotless, like smacking the little fleck of blood off his face and everything, he sounds exactly like how Shen QingQiu described him at the beginning of the novel. When Shen QingQiu was describing Liu Qingge at first, he was talking about how he was this really cool character and everybody loved him, even though he hadn't had any screen time in the book because he was killed off really quickly. Everyone thought he was badass, like the best fighter at Bison Peak, like all this stuff. And him showing up to save Shen QingQiu is exactly how he's described in Shen Yan's description at the beginning, which is really cool. And I'm glad that Liu Qingge is here. The thing about it is, Liu Qingge is kind of tsundere. He's very much like Zhang Cheng from Modao Zushi. But what I like about Liu Qingge's character so far is that he does believe Shen QingQiu. He does have faith in Shen QingQiu's words. So if in the next chapter set, Shen QingQiu's like, look, I know this stuff is crazy. I know some stuff's gone down, but Luo Binghe is not as bad as you think he is. Then I think that Liu Qingge would believe him. I just don't know about everybody else. Like if the other sects get involved, I don't know if they're going to feel the same. So that's going to be something to take note of for next week. Like, what are we going to get with this? What's going to happen? So I don't know. So yeah, but he shows up and Tianlang-Jun is very impressed with Liu Qingge. And I'm like, oh no. I was like, Tianlang-Jun is just obsessed with everybody that's powerful. So that makes sense. But I have a feeling that Tianlang-Jun is going to be intrigued by Liu Qingge. I don't know if that intrigue is going to be in a way that he wants to try to kill him or wants to try to get with him. I don't know. But I'm like, Liu Qingge, you may be in danger, sir. So I also like how they describe him, like the wargs, they try to like talk him down and like not as big of a threat as he's been in the past. And they say he should be called 99 Battles Peak. As soon as I heard 99 Battles Peak, I instantly simultaneously thought of 99 Luft Balloons and 99 Problems, but a bitch ain't one. So although 99 Problems but a bitch ain't one fits Liu Qingge a little bit better than the other one. But yeah, so, and I do like the Shen QingQiu. He calls the beasts that are like making fun of Liu Qingge, he says they're mouthy. He's like, hey, don't talk back. That guy's trying to save me. Leave him out of this. This is totally fine. But Luo Binghe is, you know, dashing outside. Like, Liu Qingge was there to save him. And Shen QingQiu's like, he couldn't just be an onlooker. He's like, I can't just sit here and let him fight for my sake and not do anything. But Luo Binghe goes out of the tent first, you know, because of course he does. Something that was really cool in this was the blood wolves that Tianlang-Jun creates. Like, he just has this bleeding hand and is just creating multiple blood wolves. And Shen QingQiu's like, does he not have an endless supply of blood? Like, he should have died from blood loss by now, but he's a demon, so whatever. But that could be something that Shen QingQiu, aka Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky, wrote into his character. It'd be great if he was here to talk about it, but he's not. But I thought the blood wolves were really cool. I like the idea of that as a monster that's been created in this. So then Tianlang-Jun's like, so you did come after all. So I guess he didn't actually know Luo Binghe was there, but man, it felt in that tent like he did. And Luo Binghe's like, well, Shizun's here. How can I not come? And he's like, well, Zhuzhi Lang, look at that face of his. The sight of this look of cold fury truly makes me happy. I wondered in that moment if Tianlang-Jun was reminded of Su Shiyan, because Luo Binghe is acting like his mom in the way he's like coldly standing up for Shen QingQiu. And I feel like Tianlang-Jun is impressed by that because it reminds him of her. But I love how he monologues and then he realizes that Zhuzhi Lang's not there. And then he's just like, Like, I thought that was really cute. That was actually really fun. But Liu Qingge is like, hey, you're here. And Shen QingQiu's like, I'm here, hey, and I'm back in this body, just so you know. Because Liu Qingge is going to recognize him. He's in Shen QingQiu's body. But then Tianlang-Jun is like, the shock, he's like, the scandal of it all. He's like, wait a minute. So all three of you were in the tent together? It wasn't just you and Zhuzhi Lang? My son was there too? And Shen QingQiu is just like, he's like, you know what? He's like, I don't know if Luo Binghe gets what his dad's saying, but I'm like, he couldn't say whether Luo Binghe understood, but the latter leapt into battle with a dark look on his face. So yeah, Luo Binghe is probably like, shit, no, we were not with Zhuzhi Lang. We did not have a threesome, but and Shen QingQiu's like, I have a migraine. So yeah, oh my God. These chapters were insane. These chapters were insane. But I was so mad. I almost was mad that Liu Qingge showed up, because even though I'm happy he's here to rescue Shen QingQiu, I was like, we were starting to make some progress, because Shen QingQiu let down the wall. He was acting like himself. He had Luo Binghe on a leash. He was telling him to heal, and Luo Binghe healed, and they were starting to explain things and talk amongst each other. And Luo Binghe came so far in this chapter set. Like, he wasn't lashing out of anger. He was, not thinking about things before they happened. He was actually, like, listening to Shen QingQiu. I felt like Luo Binghe has learned third time's a charm. This is the last time we got. So I need to pay attention and, like, listen to my Shizun and try to, like, hear him out, because he's not trying to leave me. And Shen QingQiu was like, okay, Luo Binghe is not the person I thought he was from the novel. He's got more depth to him. He's got a lot more trauma than I thought. So I need to hear him out too. We were getting close to that. And if you had told me 3 chapters ago that I'd want Shen QingQiu to stay with Luo Binghe and not have Liu Qingge show up, I'd say you were crazy. But over the course of these last set of chapters and the ones before it, it's just like a big turning point has happened. And it was this idea of Shen QingQiu kind of sacrificing himself to save Luo Binghe, and Luo Binghe realizing that. And I was actually, like, really excited for their relationship to keep going, and now Liu Qingge's there, so it's like, well, what are we gonna do? So it's just all gonna get mucked up, but I shouldn't be surprised, because we're not even halfway through the novel. So I can't predict where this is going at all. I didn't think Liu Qingge was showing up, this chapter said. I didn't think we were going on a caravan. I didn't think that a threesome would be interpreted from this. But I loved this chapter set. I thought it was hilarious and amazing, and I kept wanting to read more and more. So it's going to be really hard not to binge, y'all. It's going to be really hard not to binge. Really hard not to binge. But I'm going to wait till at least the next set of chapter comments, and then we'll be looking at next week's set, which will be chapters 66 through 68. So anyway, oh my God, I love this development and where we're going. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with the next set of chapters for Scum Villain Self-Saving System. Bye!